Hi, welcome to an overview session on one of the modules that SAP provides. That's SAP SNP, also called as a SAP APO Supply Network Planning Tool. So, what is this session divided on is into three parts. First, we're going to talk about introduction to supply network planning. Second thing, we'll be talking about the three engines that SNP provides, and finally, we're going to talk about the final phase, what it is. That's called the deployment. Okay. Now, before we go into the details of SAP APO, let us understand what is the APO architecture looks like. Okay, so here in this diagram you can see in the middle portion we have the SAP APO tool, and SAP APO is connected to two systems. One is OLTP system on the left side, on the left side, and it is connected to your OLAP system on the right side. Okay, so what is this OLTP system? This OLTP system is our ECC system, okay, also known as R3, and it kinds of acts as a place where all the master data is created and stored. And SAP provides a standard interface called the core interface, using which all the data from your OLTP system, that is your online transaction processing system, is sifted to APO. Okay, and on the right side you can see it's an OLAP system. So OLAP means it's used for BW reporting, and APO as a tool is very tightly integrated with your SAP reporting tool, that's the SAP PI, and very tightly integrated with your ECC tool. Okay, now coming to the architecture of APO. APO has primarily four modules. One is demand planning, so that's at the top. Demand planning, the process of SAP APO starts with demand planning. Once the demand planning is done, the results are published to SNP. Okay, and SNP does a rough cut planning. So once SNP planning is over, it sends the plan to the PPDS, and PPDS does a minute and second level planning. That's a production optimization for a specific plant. The final step is deployment. Okay, so what we are talking about is SAP APO has four modules, and the sequence is ideally DP, SNP, PPDS, and deployment. And there is one more module called the GATP, Global Availability Promise. Here, one important thing to note here is it's not mandatory for industries to implement all of these modules. Many of the industries which are primarily a make to order business might not even implement SNP. They might be only implemented PPDS. Whereas industries which are like pharma industries, highly forecast based, they might only be satisfied with DP and SNP. PPDS might not play an important role, while there are companies which also implement four of them. Now, going into the introduction part of the SNP, what do we do in SNP? The first step that we do in SNP is we lay our supply network. Okay, so what do we mean by laying our supply network? In any kind of business, the business would have multiple distribution centers and multiple plants. So what is the purpose of distribution centers? This distribution center actually get the orders from the customer, and they dispatch the final stocks to the customer. So getting the order and dispatching the stocks to the customer. But where does the distribution center gets the stock from? It will get the stocks from the plants. Okay, so the first part what we talk about in SNP is setting up this entire supply network, where we kind of map our physical distribution centers and plants into the system. So it's not just mapping the distribution center and plants, it's about mapping their calendars, their working times, the production capacity, all the products that they can manufacture. So the first part that SNP deals with is setting up your supply network, and then going ahead and creating all the master data that is required for your planning. So what are the master data that might be required? Your product master, your location masters, your work centers, your bill of materials, your routings, and all those things are updated. Now the good part is that all those things are created in ECC. We just need to use core interface, and the data would come back to on the APO side. Okay, so that's the first part. In SAP SNP overview, we understand the basic concepts about supply chain, and then we see how the data is created in ECC and brought into APO, and the basic supply network structure is laid out. So we are good to do the planning part. Now, once the entire supply network structure is put up, the next part is how do we do the planning. Okay, now ideally planning has only two components. One is your demand and one is your supply. Okay, So what is your demand? Your demand could be a forecast, your demand could be a sales order, your demand could be your planned independent requirement. So there are various kind of demands. Okay, now to handle those demands and have a satisfactory delivery date to those demands, SNP offers three planning engines. One is SNP Heuristics, the other is SNP Optimizer, and the final is SNP CTM. Now what is SNP heuristic? SNP heuristic is the normal MRP run in ECC that you have. It's similar to that, but along with that, what it offers is multi-plant planning. Okay, so that's SNP heuristic. Again, SNP heuristic is two-step planning process. First, it's an infinite planning, and in the next step, what we have to do is that we have to do a capacity leveling, and we get a finite production plan. And this is ideally suitable for industries which are from FMCG industries, and where capacity is not a more of a bottleneck, but supply chain and speed of processing plays a very critical role. The second engine that we have is an SNP optimizer. SNP optimizer is a cost-based planning engine. So whatever decisions it takes in terms of creating planned orders and purchase requisition, it kind of tries to find a solution that's most cost effective. Okay, so that's what SNP optimizer deals with. One important thing to note, that the costing that we do in ECC and SNP optimizer costing is completely different. So that's another kind of industries. So trading industries and some other industries would be using, even depending upon the business need, business might go for SNP optimizer. And the final engine that SNP provides is SNP capable to match. So capable to match is also called the CTM, and CTM actually is capable to execute planning in SNP as well as PPDS. So there are two versions of CTM available. CTM is basically used in case we want to do a priority based planning. CTM is very good in case we want to do a priority based planning. So what does this three planning engine do? The basic purpose is same. They take in the demand and they create receipts. Okay, but the way of creating and scheduling the planned orders for these three engines are different. So the first part that we did in SNP is laying up our supply network. Second part is taking the demand in and creating the planned orders. For that we have three engines. And finally we have deployment. So what is the use of deployment? The deployment is to ensure the requirements of DCs are fully and in the best possible manner satisfied. So in the initial, what we said, DCs supply goods to the customer. So where do they get from the plant? So it might be possible that DCs have certain requirements which plant cannot cater to. So in that situation, how to take care of that logic is built into something called as deployment, where in a limited if the plant has limited stock, how it satisfies the DCs is taken care of. And finally you have one more module called the transport load builder. So transport load builder is used for the optimal utilizations of your vehicles. Okay, so again, that's what SAP SNP overview consists of. So basically we can split it up into first part, where we talk about supply network introduction. We understand what is supply network, how do we map our supply network in our system, how do we create the master data, and how do we actually sift it from ECC to APO. The second part we talk about is creating the demand in the system, taking the planning run, and creating planned orders and production orders. And for that we have three kind of engine. And finally the third part of SNP is the deployment. So deployment is basically confirming your DCs, the stock that they actually require, and finally delivering it to the customer. So that's for SNP overview. Let us know if you have questions. We'll be more than happy to help you.